Hello, welcome to the Mindset Nebula, where we discuss everything SAP, technology, and design. Today, we've got an esteemed panel back together to do our Mindset Nebula Tech Ed wrap up. So we did a preview episode, which if you haven't caught it, go ahead and take a listen. And today we've got to go through the list, Rob
Noonschwander. Hi, nice to meet y'all.
Matthew
Begum, hello.
Trinath.
Hey, Trinath, everybody. How are you doing?
And Paru.
Hi, Parushankar. Great to be here.
So a couple of faces from the previous panel, and then a couple of new faces. Some of our developers and new faces to the Mindset Nebula as well. So welcome, Matthew and Trinath. Delighted to have you. So as I mentioned, we're going to do the sort of tech ed wrap up. We all watched some tech ed sessions, and we'll talk a little bit about what we saw. Maybe we can go around first and talk about what we expected to see, and then we'll talk about some of the main topics, and then what our favorite things were at tech ed this year. Maybe we can go in the reverse. Paru, do you want to go first this time? What did you expect at tech ed? Maybe you can recap. I mean, if people listen to the preview episode, they'll know, but what were you expecting to see?
Actually, I was looking for in-depth information. TechEd is not normally an event that I attend. I attend mostly Sapphire and get a lot of business overview. But this time I wanted to really go deep into technology and understand what was happening. I must say I got a really Sapphire kind of experience, maybe because of the tracks that I chose to watch, which was all around the digital transformation, intelligent enterprise, the business process intelligence, and so on. Yeah. So that was a little disappointing. I would have hoped for really in-depth information. That being said, it gave me quite a bit of information on the foundation side, and which is the technology foundation. And that was nice to be at TechEd and get that information, which was at the right level for me. So I would love to hear from all of you whether that met all your expectations, so.
Cool. Yeah. So thanks, Paru. And so Trinath, we didn't hear from you in the preview episode what you expected to get from TechEd this year. What was your expectation going in?
Yeah, I expect this to be, I have concentrated on a couple of topics actually. One is a customer experience. The other one is on the gateway strategies and getting a bit more technical, right? And the one thing I liked about this year's TechEd is the question and answers where they have allocated time for every session. That's more interactive. And I've seen a lot of people ask, like, they just give like a lot of questions on the during the TechEd is happening. And then it was quite interactive. And then it was like continuous sessions. So even if if it's like a physical, right? Then you have to jump on from session to session, hall to hall, and things like that. But here you sit in front of the computer, you keep the channel on, and then you continue to listen to all the tech sessions. I like the way actually. That in the virtual environment, it's all good for me.
Cool. All right, we're gonna skip around. Rob, got to keep you all on your toes.
Yeah. So definitely expected to hear a lot about BTP. BTP was a big topic at Sapphire in the context of intelligent enterprise. We've continued to hear a lot about it. We internally are continuing to invest in it a lot, and certainly our customers have their interest peaked in many different ways. And so I just assumed that was going to be a pretty big part of it, and it generally was. Also, I was expecting, having attended several tech eds before, I appreciate the kind of behind the scenes looks, and I guess under the covers, if you will, looking at some of the code that drives these things. And I'm always interested to see how, how they're implemented rather than just the kind of the slideware of, connecting boxes with lines. So I expected, a fair amount of that in the sessions that I was going to be attending.
And then Matthew, what was your expectation going in?
Yeah, pretty much coming off of what Rob said. I expected a lot of business technology platform stuff. SAP's really kind of gone all in after their rebrands of SAP Cloud Platform into Business Technology Platform. And I expected this tech ed to have a lot of different sessions about how business technology platform can make businesses better. But I really expected from a developer's perspective, how does business technology platform make my job easier as a developer? And also I can deliver better applications to customers faster. And we got a lot of that through various processes or various technologies that BTP has.
Cool. Sounds good. So I think maybe we should talk about some of the main topics that were covered at TechEd, or maybe that weren't covered that we were expecting to see covered. Although I think most of what we expected was there. I guess we can kind of just go through them in some sort of order. Maybe I'm basing this off of the executive keynote ordering, but let's talk a little bit about BTP free tier. What that means, like, I don't know if it was particularly surprising to anybody. They've been kind of rolling out free tiers of various sorts over the course of the year. But from your perspective, what does this mean for developers and for BTP?
It wasn't really a surprise. They had soft announced a free tier, especially for customers, especially with people with existing licenses, people that didn't have a license at all. But they pretty much did a soft announcement earlier this year on it, so it really wasn't a big surprise. However, what I really liked was the fact that they're including almost everything that's available on BTP in their free tier without you having to step on the toes of paying a license fee or paying some data fees. It's similar to where the HANA cloud trial was back in the day, where a lot of stuff was pre-configured. You could try out a lot of tools and not have to really worry about any of your productive licenses. But from a developer standpoint, having that free tier, especially what they were talking about, having that free tier to be able to test out new IDEs, for example, the Business Application Studio, test out new DevOps processes, test out, new mobile services approaches, any of those really kind of new age ways of development. Free tiers kind of exposes that to the developer without having to spend any money, without having to go to a company that has it, without having to ask a customer for access. It allows the developer to kind of do some individual exploration around those technologies.
Yep. Yeah. It hopefully will make it easier to adopt, it sounds like, so that you don't have to be dependent on your employer or something like that in order to get access.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, pulling in a theme that we were going to probably get to a little bit later too. One of the other announcements was around the SAP Learning community and new interfaces, new kind of offerings there. I think having that free BTP tier available is a critical component to being successful in providing all those learning opportunities, because so much of it is about getting your hands on and actually working with the tools and configuring them together and putting together use cases. And if you remove that barrier and actually enabling that hands-on experience, it makes such a richer learning environment, and I think it's sets up really well for enabling people to take greater advantage of that, and of course that's then key in a virtuous cycle for SAP, getting more people using it and having more success on the platform. So I think that was a critical piece for making that other strategy successful. So I was happy to see it.
Yeah. And I think that's where the whole high level information and touch point down to making mattering where it actually happens, right? I was pretty much sure the integration part would not be included in that free tier, and it was interesting that it is. I would love to explore that a little bit to see whether it's substantial enough for us to really set up that end-to-end processes, because as partners, I believe that's where we can make a big difference, bringing that whole integration aspect, especially from the perspective, if you look into the process experience, that is one area I would love to really have developers explore and set up very creative scenarios. So giving that free tier, I think, will bring in a lot of creativity into the SAP world. I would love to see whether there is a place where we can capture all this creativity that comes out of the developer world now that that free access is given. That is something I would love to see SAP explore, or at least we can explore, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, in terms of the access and creativity, yeah, there's always been a little bit more offered in free tier than you might expect. I think there are some downsides as well, but overall, it was a good offering. SAP still has a little ways to go in terms of really making this work, both in terms of sizing. So there's sort of severe limitations around certain services in the free tier, like the HANA database service, where it only runs for a certain amount of time at any given time, and then it will shut down until you restart it, and then it will delete itself after a certain number of days. And it's just a resources issue, right? The HANA database service just takes too many resources, and you can't support that on the free tier. So infrastructurally, like, this is something SAP should work on. It's something that customers have been asking for a long time. Why does my HANA database have to take 5 billion bajillion gigabytes of RAM all the time? And it's getting better, but there's work to do there. And then there's an access issue also, where as much as SAP talked about sort of equity and all that stuff in the keynote, the developer free tier is not available in India. And that's unfortunate. And I think SAP will hopefully be addressing that. So really good progress. And like, it's sort of another step. There have been like 3 or 4 really good steps in BTP free tier this year. And this was another really good one.
Ethan, maybe the scaling part has something to do with SAP free tier not being available in India, right? I mean, if you look into the number of developers, it's a very good test case for all the cloud applications that customers are going to build up, and the ability to withstand that kind of performance pressure.
Yeah, for sure. And then Rob, you brought up the learning offering and the new learning platform. I believe learning.sap.com, pretty easy to remember. This is another platform, right? Aside from Open SAP and Learning Hub and all the other, like, help.sap.com and all that kind of stuff. But it's a new platform, and it was piloted, I think, earlier in the year. And now with TechEd, there are 7 or 8 different learning journeys on the sort of TechEd BTP topics. Did anybody get a chance to try it out?
Okay.
Putting you on the spot.
No.
All right.
No, I have not tried it.
I clicked over to it during the sessions to take a look at it. But I haven't dove beyond the second drill down click in any of those sessions yet. So I haven't quite seen it. I would comment that it certainly is an area that was in need of improvement, and not so much even in it all in the quality of training available, but just the organization of it and how hard it is to kind of weave your way through a track in a sensible way to obtain the value of it. They have some really rich individual learning topics and capabilities, and like Open SAP courses provide a ton of value. And the on the BTP side, you've got all these missions that can take you through some really interesting development use cases and walk you through it. That's all awesome, but it's not tied together in any kind of sensible way that really helps you kind of move from crawl to walk to run with any particular track. So I think it was in need of it. I'm hopeful that what they've put together will really meet the need and hit the mark.
Yeah, I think for people who haven't tried it out, in some ways it's a little bit like developers.sap.com, where if you get down to the individual tutorial level, where there's this sort of step-by-step tutorial around how to go through a particular part of the learning journey. But I think the really important thing about learning.sap.com is that it's focused on these learning journeys, and the sort of information architecture is really much improved over, I think, any of SAP's other platforms. So it really brings you on a journey from very beginning steps all the way through, for some of them, certification readiness in a particular area. And yeah, it's pretty nice. I mean, I think that it's a good it's a good architecture for how learning should work at SAP in the future, and hopefully they see continued success. It also is democratizing in certain ways. They're pulling, I think, content out of Learning Hub where it's sort of locked away, but also out of other websites where you can actually get to it, but it's hard to get to, and pulling it all together. And so that's going to be really helpful as well. Really looking forward to that in other areas.
Yeah, SAP is famous for locking away content in SAP Learning Hub, and Open SAP is a wonderful resource, but sometimes the content you get in Open SAP will go away for a while and you can't access it again. And hopefully this new Learning Hub will maintain some consistency and also give you some better navigation. I mean, you touched on certifications. I think it's going to be really big for SAP to provide a roadmap to attaining a certification, especially with many employers today willing to compensate people or willing to purchase test attempts for individuals to get their certifications. And with today's presence of COVID, where in-person learnings aren't super possible or aren't super realistic, to be able to provide a roadmap for an individual to attain a specific certification is very valuable.
Yeah, for sure. And really understand that you're ready for it. It's not particularly helpful to look at a certification and have it say like, prerequisite is ABC 1, 2, 3 course. And then you have to go look at that course and look at the table of contents and be like, do I know that? Like, I can't get at the content, so I can't really see if I actually know everything that's covered.
Yeah. Or you see that course and you see another list of prereqs, right, and then you go look at those prereqs and see another.
Yeah. So having it just out there and open and something that anybody can go through. And there are pieces of these learning journeys sometimes that are paid content, but the idea of these learning journeys seems to be that every single step that you need to take to get certified is something that you can access for free right there with just an SAP P user account. So not even a customer account.
I think also, cool, Ethan, with a few of the new announcements at TechEd, like the low-code citizen developer aspect and so on, there will be a need to have that kind of journey. Now, I know we won't go into that citizen developer part yet, but just to kind of let people know where they need to start the journey would be useful, whether it is with the AppGyver or whether it is with Signavio, with business process intelligence, those aspects for people who are completely new to touching any technology of SAP, right? So that might be a good starting point for those people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, maybe we should go into this power. What can we fight it out about like low code, no code, pro code? Maybe not in that order.
Maybe we should have a dedicated episode for the no code, and then if I can get some of my relatives to do the no code part, that is when I will say SAP has been successful. If I can do it, SAP has not been successful. So
So our prerequisite for no code is that Paru is not able to operate the
no, the prerequisite is that Paru, even if Paru is able to operate it, you are not no code. So
got it.
It should be somebody, my cousin, who is completely into English literature, who can do it, right? So
yeah, absolutely. So there were announcements around AppGyver, and specifically around AppGyver as part of BTP. So AppGyver is the I guess I would say no code platform that SAP acquired. I think it was earlier this year. It wasn't even a year ago that they acquired AppGyver. And it is a platform that is focused on it. There's a sort of I want to say development environment, but it's not a development environment. It's more of an authoring environment. And you build these applications that can be deployed to mobile or as websites, web applications. And you do it without writing any code by dragging around visual elements, by connecting to backend services using configuration. And that's now integrated into BTP. So you can deploy AppGyver applications that make use of BTP services, which is actually pretty cool, I think. It really makes it a lot easier from an IT perspective to enable your sort of pro users, non-super users, non-developer users to build applications in a much more controlled environment, if you want to do that. So I think that's very positive. I like AppGyver. I think it's kind of cool. I think it is, I don't know, it's one of the nicest platforms. There are a bunch of no-code platforms, and I think most of them are pretty hacky.
Yeah. Yes.
But I actually like AppGyver. I think it's one of the best of them, if not the best. Maybe not always as far as features, but as far as how it actually works, I think it's really, really quite good.
Challenge. Yeah, go ahead, Matthew.
I'm interested to see how SAP uses AppGyver around, sales or around delivery, or if they for a really long time, a few years ago, they were always talking about, build, SAP build. That was really popular. It was a very popular marketing tool, very popular no code, template technology where you could kind of show examples to people. I'm kind of wondering if they try to approach AppGyver a similar way, where they try to start including it in kind of sales roadmaps around showing customers products, or even getting all the way to delivery. So I'm really interested in that.
Yeah, maybe kind of a gap filler, I guess you would say.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. So AppGyver already, like as you said, Ethan, was acquired like a year ago or something, right? It's already had like 100,000 users on it.
Mm-hmm.
So they're already onto it. And then the other thing also was they mentioned is they're also building some of this low code, no code capabilities into the business application studio. I'm actually curious to see how that will work for SAP.
Yeah.
I think to Ethan's point, what was very interesting for me to see from the AppGyver part was the access to all the backends of SAP, at least S4, right? I mean, the challenge will always remain how much of APIs are available, how much is exposed out of S4 that AppGyver can actually utilize, but nevertheless, it's a good starting point. I think what caused a friction in my mind was Jürgen Müller talking about the machine operator on the shop floor coming and creating his own application. I don't think AppGyver will be there yet, because he has talked number of hours. So I just wish he would have chosen a better example than that. But it will be a good tool for business IT admins, in the sense of people on the business side who are more administrator support. I remember when we had a complete changeover from PeopleSoft to SAP in the company that I worked in before. At that point of time, the business IT administrators had quite a lot of requirements they typically had to pass on to IT teams to develop out. I think that is something that could absolutely speed up right now. Some of the more tech-savvy business users might also want to create their own applications, but I don't see every single user coming. If it becomes that simple, that would be absolutely a game changer.
Paru, I'm gonna have to take issue with your discrimination against shop floor employees.
No, it's just the amount of time you have. You have other things to do in life, Ethan, not sit and create applications.
So I've met some really I guess so in my travels, I've come across some people in IT departments where it was really interesting. Like basically this person, or I've come across a couple of these people were in the IT department because they were on the shop floor and they developed a bunch of like Visual Basic applications or something like that to make their job easier. And the IT department was at some point realized what had happened, probably when they were doing a plant rollout or something like that. And and they realized, wow, these applications have to stay in place because the whole business depends on them, but we need to learn we need to bring this person in-house so that we can actually have some governance and some knowledge around these applications. So there are those people out there on the shop floor who are gonna.
I meant it's not a no-code application where they can spend very less time. They will still have to do
Correct.
things long enough
Yeah.
that it will take away substantial time of theirs from their normal work, and that is what is my concern, right? So
yeah, and
Yeah,
then
I mean,
go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to say the whole. Well, there's multiple ways that this shows value, but one of the big things is IT becomes such a bottleneck sometimes because there's long lines to get projects approved and to get work done, and you've got a backlog of priority. And so it becomes really attractive as a shadow IT type of function for a finance department that has a tech savvy business user that could stand up an application to access the data that they need and put a quick approval around it and drive those through. So I definitely see where there's a significant value proposition on that side. Two things that that I've observed in the past, it becomes problematic because you get to some of those change management activities, and as you maintain that application over its life cycle, and all of a sudden the services underneath them break, and all of a sudden the application isn't working, and no one can figure out what's happening with that. And so that level of control and governance is certainly becomes problematic over time. So be interested to see how that gets accounted for in the mix. Yeah.
I'm interested to see how KUNNR field is going to be picked up by the users in AppGuy. So.
It's in the OData service part. It's very well named, right? As long as there is an OData service, and most of the time, well, a lot of the time, not so much.
Yeah, I think Rob put it very nicely. I think it's a tech savvy person who can still use it. It's not a non-tech savvy person who can come in and use it, right? So
yeah, I completely agree. And the governance aspect is going to be very interesting. I don't think that I think most IT groups are still on the sort of relatively nascent side of being able to govern that kind of thing. And currently the governance strategy is no, don't build that stuff. And so you do get shadow IT, and you get into these battles around whether that's going to be allowed or not. I wonder how the story is going to develop using things like process intelligence and the ability to have this embedded into BTP and more integrated with our IT systems. Is there going to be a real story that develops there around governance and how an IT department should actually approach that, and should approach providing this really business capability to its departments and its users? So we'll see how that plays out. Speaking of capabilities, great segue. Embedded Steampunk was announced. I don't know how much we want to get into that. I can give a brief overview of what was announced, and maybe some of the use cases, and maybe we can talk a little bit about our thoughts on this. But so how am I going to start this? Steampunk is the name that the techies use for the SAP BTP environment, ABAP environment, I think it's called, but it's ABAP in the cloud. And so it's a version of the ABAP runtime that is not the same as on-premise. It leads it by a little bit. Usually the features and some of the restrictions that come to the ABAP environment for BTP come to on-premise S4 a year or 2 years later. So for the ABAPers among us, the RAP, the RESTful ABAP programming model, was first introduced in the BTP ABAP environment 3 or so years ago, and matured a little bit there, and then came to S4 in the 1909 release, and then the fully mature version in the 2020 S4 release. So that environment is a sort of standalone ABAP environment, and it's been promoted by SAP to some extent as the extension platform for both on-premise S4 and cloud S4. So, the pitch is you've got ABAPers, you've got S4 HANA Cloud. These ABAPers don't need to learn Node.js or Python or anything like that. They can just develop ABAP extensions in the ABAP environment on the cloud platform, and they can extend S4 HANA Cloud. The hangup, of course, is that that's all service-based, right? So there's no RFC connection there. There's no IDOCs. Well, you could have IDOCs, I guess, but there's no direct connection. So you can only use service-based connections, OData services, for the most part. And not every object in the SAP system, to put it in a nice way, is service enabled, right? So lots of stuff you still need to get in there and use ABAP APIs to do anything with it. And that limited the extensibility of S4HANA Cloud to some extent. So customers really had a difficulty with migrating to S4HANA Cloud because they had business processes and extensions in their on-premise systems that they simply could not move to S4HANA Cloud in a way that made sense. So enter embedded Steampunk, which is the idea that we've got a version of Steampunk, the ABAP environment for HANA Cloud, that comes with and is internal to your S4 HANA Cloud environment, so that you can actually access local APIs, SAP calls them, in addition to like the sort of service APIs, the web service type of APIs, so that you can call released function modules or released classes. You can use the wrap CDS model APIs, the new APIs that are, one of them was demoed during the developer keynote, and then later in the session around sales orders, which is this. It's like when you use wrap, you create OData services, but you also create a business object-based API in the system, and you can access that using ABAP. And so you'll actually be able to do that with this embedded Steampunk type of deployment model. So that's kind of interesting. It's a relatively narrow use case, but I think it might be really important for migrating to S4HANA Cloud for some customers. What do people think about embedded Steampunk? Cool name?
It is a cool name. You did a really good job of describing it too.
Yeah.
And I think just that part alone makes this podcast probably really helpful for a number of people. So I think that it takes a little bit of getting your head around it, and certainly I think it's probably most greatly appreciated by the ABAP community, who have kind of suffered through those limitations. To me, I think the last part that you hit on maybe offers some of the most utility. If you're an organization that's invested a lot in your ABAP development staff, and you have a team that makes great effect of that stack to provide extensions, this is a pathway, a more reasonable pathway to the cloud that comes with a lot less restriction and enables you to kind of extend your investment in those people and their capabilities and their skills to a new set of use cases.
I think this makes the case of extensibility more strong than it used to be in the past for the S4HANA Cloud, right? So this is one way in which SAP has actually, even in the past with the extension story and an upgrade protected extension story, there was a good story. And now with the Steampunk embedded, it becomes even easier because of the shared code line and having the access to the same code line with all the restrictions. But I think the way SAP works on the APIs, it won't be too difficult if you ask for if you give feedback often enough to SAP to get that prioritized. I think challenge typically is on prioritization of which API should be developed enough for everybody to use it, and this may be a good channel for everyone to start asking for more. It's, as Rob said, really good for customers to come into the cloud path and think about not just having standard processes, but even going beyond the standard processes. That way, it is powerful. The part that I found sad is not yet on-prem, and only the developments for Steampunk on the on-prem would be restricted to what is required for the cloud. So there will be nothing specific for on-prem as far as I understood. So that is going to be a bit difficult for customers who are going on to S4 on-prem journey to stomach. So that is maybe a gap that people will notice.
Yeah, absolutely. SAP is certainly developing, I guess I would say, its on-premise runtime story. It's sort of a mess right now. So you can do certain things in Steampunk runtime on-premise. Most development is in the ABAP objects runtime type of the old runtime. They also have the key user ABAP for key users runtime, which is a severely limited version of ABAP. So it's all over the place. It's a lot of fun for the techies trying to keep track of what the heck is going on with that stuff. All right. Any other comments? I don't know. Trinath and Matthew, do you find Steampunk interesting? Embedded Steampunk? I know most work is on premise, right? So
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's like good, Matthew.
Oh, I find it really interesting, especially when they're talking about ABAP for the future. You know, people always are wondering, you know, people are always wondering, you know, is ABAP going to go away? What's going to happen to SAP on premise? Is SAP going to get to the point where on premise is no longer possible? I just think it's really interesting, especially for the future when we're talking about being able to kind of start bridging that gap, especially with extensions, where we can kind of, you know, Purdue talked about it a little bit, the unified code line between extensions, where you can wonder if we can get to the point where we write extensions the same way on-prem and in the cloud, and deploy them and action them and use them the same way, no matter what environment that we're using. I think that provides a very valuable approach. You talked about the sales order example being a little bit narrow, but I think it's a narrow example, but I think it applies. It's easier for people to understand that example, and I think it applies, especially within the extension space, where everybody, I think, deals with sales orders that uses SAP. You know, almost everybody, at least, you know, whether they're using internal or external vendors. So I think it's going to provide a really cool future for ABAP, and I think they did they're doing a pretty good job of documenting this and having the resources kind of out there, even though it's still, you know, kind of, it's still the beginning, right? You know, it's still technically the future. It's not now. So
Matthew, you're almost making me jump out of my seat, because I just got this beautiful future of SAP in front of my eyes, with customers who are group customers who have on-prem S/4HANA and a cloud S/4HANA, and how they would kind of bring together applications. Now I'm kind of bringing the low code, no code, everything together, and have the Steampunk embedded to extend their applications, and everything works in a kind of seamless, streamlined way. Sorry, Ethan.
yes.
Now it's back to you, you know. I can see him almost taking 10 deep breaths to control himself. So.
Just have to be very calm.
Be very calm. Do not sell the house just yet. Let's be calm.
Trinath, do you have a last word on embedded Steampunk?
Yeah, absolutely. I think all of you actually covered it well. I'm not in deep on the Steampunk, but one question which is always there coming from the development background is, like, with all the open source kicking in into SAP, what's the ABAP development's future? So with these kind of, you know, extensibility options, is always good for them. And right now, majority of the organizations are moving into S4 cloud. So it'll be always a benefit for the ABAP development. And then for the organizational, I mean, for the big ones, right, who was heavily invested in the ABAP expertise, it's always a good thing for them to. Glad that SAP is doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, cool. I think we've covered most of the topics we wanted to, and we're starting to run a little bit long. I want to take like 15 seconds each at the end here to just hit on what was your absolute favorite thing at TechEd this year. We'll go around fast, so be ready. Rob.
So I mentioned I like to see the code, getting a look at some of the BTP use cases on an editor and running and being built, and all of that. I that's always my favorite part of TechEd.
Great. Matt.
Continuous integration and continuous delivery. Big fan of DevOps and how DevOps is changing the way that you can build, test, and deploy applications on BTP. Now, they don't have any of the really cool DevOps features available for on-prem yet, but it's all within their BTP platform, and especially how it fits seamlessly right into their cloud application programming model. They had two very good sessions between those two topics that I recommend everybody to go look at.
Great. Trina?
I like the SAP process automation where they said it's a new no-code process, and then it's an automated solution on BTP, which enables the workflow management and then the embedded robotic process automation. So it's a cool feature. I mean, it's available to a few customers right now, but yeah, hopefully it's offered everyone on the market.
All right. Paru, if others didn't steal your favorite topic.
I think I am volunteering to be a citizen developer with the no-code platform that was demoed at the TechEd. So that was, yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yelena will shoot me now. That's the part I wanted to discuss with her in depth.
That's why she couldn't be on this iteration of the podcast.
I can see the customers lining up already, Paru. They're ready for it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rob. But no, I think that is exciting, but not exciting enough. And I'm waiting for next year's TechEd to see how that would have developed. So yes,
the applications will build themselves next year.
Yeah, exactly. That touches on Trinad's artificial intelligence aspect as well. So.
I'm going to cheat and do two, but I'm going to still go fast. I like the learning platform a lot. I think it's got real potential. And I really liked actually in the executive keynote, the focus on the sort of motivation for why we're doing these things, which if I recall correctly, and it did seem to stick with me, was like the sort of the COVID epidemic and remote work, and then sustainability, which is huge. And then the sort of inclusion equality type of thing. I would have loved to see more follow through on it, but I really like the focus on the motivating sort of drivers that SAP has from a technology standpoint. And I hope that those really continue to sort of be the guiding lights for where SAP is trying to go with their technology. All right. Well, thank you all for joining today on the Mindset Nebula. That's what this thing is called, the Mindset Nebula. Thanks so much for joining, Rob, Matthew, Trinath, and Paru. And yeah, it was a great wrap up, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you, Ethan, for hosting.
Yeah, bye, everyone.
Bye.